Okay, well, welcome to the inaugural Macro Alumni Speaker Series. This is our first event of a new program we're trying to launch where we're highlighting macro social work alums and the work that they're doing. We're also, as a school, trying to highlight and develop more of our macro offerings, both in terms of field placement classes and just make that a more robust sort of part of our curriculum. So today we will hear from Danial Khan, who I've known for a while, who he received his MSW and MBA from UB. He's currently a certified financial social worker and is the financial wellness program manager of the Mind Over Money program at Stanford. His background on his Zoom right now is actually of Stanford. It looks beautiful. In terms of format today, Danial will present for about 20 to 30 minutes about his macro social work experience, his current work, what brought him to macro social work, and really just whatever else he thinks would be interesting for you all. After that, we'll open it up to questions. I've received a couple of questions from some of you already via email from the audience. And then last, we'll close with some questions I've prepared in advance, some questions that I have. This will be recorded. We're sort of experimenting with what time works best for people. So this was what my first guess was, but after today, we'll reevaluate. So this will be recorded. But I've made Danial a co-host, so he's going to share his screen and present to us for a little bit, and then we'll have more of an open dialogue. So thank you everyone for attending, and thank you Danial for taking on this role of being the first speaker in this new speaker series.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. And glad to see all of you here. I see some familiar people here already, but I wanted to share my screen. I have a couple slides to show. All right, can I get a thumbs up that you can see my screen? Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so yes, as Mike mentioned, I am Danial Khan, he, him pronouns, and in 2021, I earned my dual degree from UB for social work and in business. I became a certified financial social worker, and I'm just really grateful that y'all were interested in this career path. Maybe the financial social work part is what stood out to you. I know it might not be familiar to some people, and it wasn't really familiar to me either. Someone actually from the School of Social Work had mentioned this career path, and so it was interesting to me. Hopefully it's interesting to you. And I'll try to keep an eye on the chat too. Yeah, no worries. If you need to jump off at any point, no worries. I'm going to put my email in the chat ahead of time. That way, if you did want to reach out for any questions later, I'm always happy to hear from you. Let me make sure I got that right. There you go. There's my email. Feel free to reach out whenever. Okay. So hopefully throughout this, you'll be able to take a few nuggets that might inform the path that you're on, or maybe someone else you know, things that you might want to mention to people, friends, family, or colleagues. But I wanted to start off this career journey or path with some of the lessons that I've taken away from childhood up until when I really got into college that have sort of shaped not just my work ethic, but my personal philosophy for life. And I won't take too much time on this part, but I think will be appropriate to lead into why I got into social work in the first place and why I chose the path that I did. And so in terms of some of the things that have influenced what I do and the path that I've taken, I wanted to start off with this poem that has stood out to me and has kind of meant a lot to me in terms of, again, informing my personal philosophy and my work ethic. And it's called What is Success by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And so I'll just read it. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. So I mentioned that because there's a few bits and pieces of that resonate with me particularly. And I wanted to talk about one of the first lessons that I've learned that informs my work, and that's on reframing and influencing. And so growing up, my mom was a big influence on me, obviously, as most of us. But my mom would pose every chore that we needed to get done as a challenge, because she knew that I really love challenges. And so she'd be like, Daniel, how fast can you mow the lawn? I bet you can't do it in another 20 minutes. Or, she would just try to phrase everything as a challenge because I would get right on it and it was motivating to me. And so I guess she taught me a lot about psychology and how to influence, because I learned to see work and difficulty as obstacles, puzzles, and problems in the sense of a game. And so I began to realize that if I practiced framing difficult things as a source of joy and a prompt for action, that I not only would make more meaningful risks in my own life, but I would embrace the process when it got difficult and hopefully serve as a model for others who might benefit from their own perspective shift. And so my mom, and now several years of leading teams and projects, have taught me the skills of leading and motivating, and to be a model of calm and joy during stressful and difficult situations. And so I've learned that understanding your people, whether it's the people you serve, students, clients, or the people that you manage on your team, understanding them well enough to know what type of framing and motivation is going to best influence joyful action and execution is going to produce less stress and more joy in your work. And I think that's especially relevant in social work. And so the next lesson is about focusing on being deeply interested and not interesting. So you can see these are pictures of me listening, I guess, that I found. I look very serious, like I want to punch this guy in the face. He's actually a good dude. When I was in elementary school, people would call me Dr. D. And the reason why is because on my school bus, people would sit next to me and tell me about their lives and struggles, little elementary school friends, as if I was like the school bus therapist. But I was a patient listener, an early student of psychology, even before I knew what that was. And I felt this deep desire to understand how I could help people. And so this carried with me throughout my life, influences how I coach, how I teach, consult, and how I lead when I'm at work. And I encourage you to think about someone in your life who makes you feel important, that makes you feel empowered and understood, and someone who really listens. Because my hope is to be that person for other people, not just in my personal life, but in my work. And I noticed that I've made many more friends and connections from being interested versus being or trying to be interesting. And so it's good to be comfortable talking about yourself. But I found that thoughtful questions, active listening, and genuine interest do much more good than trying to make an impression. And in my career, I strive to be a more dependable coach, friend, team member, and leader, and known to be patient, interested, and diligent as a listener, because it helped me appreciate more of the beauty in my work and to keep finding the best in others. And then finally, the third lesson I want to talk about is about doing the simple little acts to make things just a bit better. And so several years ago, after I graduated from my psychology degree, also at UB, and I minored in health and wellness for reference, I quit my job, which was my first job at Walgreens after 6 years. And I decided to embark on this road trip around the United States. Just took my Corolla and for a few months just drove around the country, going to like national parks, trying to skate in different cities, with the hopes of figuring out what the hell I wanted to do with my life and how I could become a better person in general. And so during this adventure, I found that poem that I talked about, Success by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And the phrase "a bit better" stuck in my mind. Thank you, Pat. I saw you in the chat. And so that phrase "a bit better" stuck in my mind. And so I started to think how I can make this trip more intentional and how I wanted to spend my time during this road trip. And so with the very little money that I had, I wanted to make the world a bit better the day that I found that poem. And so I spent the day handing out granola bars to anyone who was hungry. Just took my skateboard, was cruising around. And if someone was hungry, I had some granola bars. I was like, hey, you want one? Just sparked up a conversation. I tried to pick up any little piece of litter that if I made contact with it, So I have this rule, and this started here. If I see someone that looks like they're having a bad day, I smile. And if I see something on the ground and a garbage can nearby, I pick it up and I throw it out. And so that kind of started from this sort of practice on this trip. And then finally, I put this picture here because there was one day I bought some flowers and handed them out to people at a local bookstore and gave them the option to either keep it for themselves or someone they care about, or to give it to someone else that they passed by today to like kind of pay it forward. And so anyways, this was just a really good day. And it became clear to me how this philosophy of a bit better and this mission to do good on a daily basis applies to the work I do now. And I think is the reason why I ended up here now. Okay, so for these next sections, Mike actually provided a few different prompts to kind of lay out some of my path. And so hopefully this is kind of a somewhat linear way of talking about where I started and where I am now. But in terms of my background, you heard a little bit about my philosophy, some of the things that inspired me and influenced me, like my mom and some of the trips I've taken. But I grew up in Williamsville, New York. My mom, she cleaned houses for a living for decades. And my dad sold leather goods with his brothers in Pakistan or from Pakistan. I was in a low income household. And so after I graduated from high school, I had some savings from my job at Walgreens, but I went to Erie Community College, which I think was a really good transition from high school going into college life. Saved a lot of money, and it just felt like a good transition. But financial aid helped cover a lot of my expenses for school, but I really felt this need that I needed to learn how to manage my money more effectively. And I wanted to teach my parents as well to help them with their retirement. And so a couple other things, I really enjoy thrift and frugality. I don't know if y'all have the same pleasure in finding something super cheap that you really, really get a lot of enjoyment out of. But that's something that I enjoy. And I wanted to spend more on things that were worthwhile to me while getting more enjoyment for the least amount of money. And so after traveling for a bit, like I mentioned on the budget, I did that road trip. I went to France for this language exchange program for a few months before I went to grad school. But doing all this in a budget and preparing for grad school, I was studying personal finance on my own, entrepreneurship, and then some skills in communication and influence. But I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to go to school for. And so a couple of things I did know or felt like I wanted were that I wanted to be a social entrepreneur. I felt like I wanted to create or start a business that had a meaningful impact on people. I wanted to learn how to better communicate to improve people's lives. And I wanted to find ways that I could positively influence not just individuals, but also communities and hopefully the world at large in some way, right? And so the intersection of learning how to develop, operate, and scale a business, merged with the values and ethics of social work, as well as how to effectively influence sustainable social change, was really all that resonated with me, and is the reason why I chose social work and business administration as the two concentrations for my grad school. And when I applied, it ended up working out, and I'm glad it did. But so that leads me to actually the program itself. So the dual degree, the MSW MBA 3-year program, I thought was a perfect fit for what I was looking for. I talked about some of the interests and like the proclivities I had as an individual, but I really just loved the interdisciplinary style of the program, and that it was combining two disciplines that may seem like they're not really in the same realm, social work and business, but I personally thought that they were a perfect fit, especially just because of my personal interest towards those things. But I thought that it would also just be interesting in terms of finding different types of careers. And so I started with the MBA, and that turned out to be pretty challenging, but it was definitely worthwhile. And I'm glad I started off with that because it was a good challenge and I made a lot of connections. Actually, one of my friends, Cassie, she was the only other MBA MSW in my cohort. She just joined to wish me luck in the beginning of this presentation. So hopefully y'all made some good connections to your program as well. But during my MBA, I started a TA position teaching business statistics and analytics using Excel. And that ended up being one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, honestly. I did that for 3 years. Every year I was in my grad program. I'm still connected to the people I work with and the 600 plus students that I was able to teach. I still get messages from them, just saying hi, I get to check in on how they're doing. And this position actually provided a good stipend and tuition reimbursement, which was super helpful. And so having some of these opportunities, I'm going to check these questions come up.
Daniel, your audio is getting a bit choppy. I don't know if maybe you're touching your microphone or I don't know what's going on, but it's just, try it now.
Do I still sound choppy?
A little bit, but much better.
Okay, I'll try to speak a little slower.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Right. It could just be my voice. And anyway, so yeah, so I ended up also becoming a certified financial social worker. And so through that program, you basically learn some skills around helping people with their personal finance, budgeting and money management, building and managing credit. Ooh, yeah, maybe my connection is weak. I hope that it doesn't continue like that. I'll try to close some windows real quick. Okay, yeah, so let me turn off my video. I think that might help a little bit for now. And then once it stabilizes, I'll turn it back on. Okay. Hopefully, does this sound a little better?
It does.
Okay, let me just keep the video off for now, just until I get through this part. Okay, where were we? Okay, so becoming a certified financial social worker, you learn how to help people better understand their relationship with money, how to improve their financial behaviors, whether it comes to spending, managing their money, building and managing credit, investing for the future, etc. And then also how to manage their finances with confidence and how to develop a plan for their future. And so I really like the idea. You've heard of financial planning or advising, but I really like the idea of empowering others to manage their own finances, not just to tell them what to do or to handle their money for them. And that's a different path, and some people do need that for a certain situation. But for me, I really like the idea of having someone learn how to do it themselves. And so during grad school, particularly in my social work projects, a lot of those were centered around this approach. So namely trying to offer financial counseling and coaching for low-income college students, for immigrant and refugee small business owners, and for survivors of domestic violence. And so after my MBA program, I participated in the Social Impact Fellows program. And I thought that was a really appropriate bridge. I'm not sure if anyone is a Social Impact Fellow or has heard of the program, but it's a good bridge between social work and business, or vice versa. I worked at a nonprofit organization, Habitat for Humanity Buffalo, on a multidisciplinary team. And we did some support around community outreach. They had neighborhood revitalization programs that were helping people in Buffalo find affordable housing and access to interest-free loans for home repairs. And we also created our own program, which was meant to train local young men and women in minor home repair skills so that they could serve their elderly neighbors and homeowners with affordable home maintenance, and also just to build more community between generations living in the area. And so this is a great primer for entering social work. I had a lot more context and enthusiasm for what I was going to be learning. For my internships, because we have our 2 field placements, my first was at the Homeless Alliance of Western New York. There, I worked with continuum of care providers in the neighboring counties to develop resources and bolster the resources for unhoused people and to strive to end youth homelessness in the area. And thank you, Pat. Actually, Pat Shelley just put a link to the Social Impact Fellow program in the chat. So I would definitely recommend checking that out if you are interested. And so, yeah, so Homeless Alliance of Western New York, I got to do a lot of cool stuff with them around trying to end youth homelessness and build supports for unhoused people. And my advanced year placement was at an organization called WEDI, Westminster Economic Development Initiative. So they offer affordable microloans and business technical assistance to entrepreneurs, largely immigrants and refugees, who, I don't know if anyone's heard of the West Side Bazaar, but that's operated by Weedy, and that's where a lot of these entrepreneurs end up selling their products. So there, I researched a lot about predatory lending practices. I identified trusted local lenders for like personal and business loans. And I also presented to the staff and board of directors at Weedy on integrating financial social work practices into their technical assistance. Because as entrepreneurs, you not just have your business financing that you have to take care of, but especially as an immigrant and refugee, learning about the US banking system and planning for the future was particularly important. I have a private chat of someone that owned a business at the West Side Bazaar, so happy to see that. And that Mike actually mentioned having a visit at West Side Bazaar. So yeah, a lot of people are aware of it. I'm really glad to hear that. It's a great service and a lot of really cool food and clothing and a lot of other things that you can buy there. And so there are a lot of highlights and benefits to mention from this dual degree program. I was also a Western New York Prosperity Fellow. I was a member of the Macro Social Work Group, and I worked on that with Pat Shelley, actually. And then part of the first iteration of the Social Sector Innovation course, which I believe Mike and Tom Albrecht both were teaching at the time. And I think that's still offered. So I'm not sure if, is that still offered, Mike? Social Sector Innovation?
It's in flux right now. It wasn't offered this year, but that doesn't mean it won't be offered next year.
Okay, I hope it is, because it was a good experience. And again, it was bridging a lot of the business interests with promoting social impact. But I met a lot of friends and mentors that helped shape who I am and where I ended up. Through social work, I developed leadership skills, awareness of issues in Western New York and beyond, and got some real world experience that if you are in the social work program right now, I'm sure you've already been getting that through your field placement and through the curriculum. But I have a lot more passion and energy for the work now because of the School of Social Work and the School of Management. And so that is more or less my education career. Before I move on, is there any questions that come up before I go into like my post-graduation? You can put those in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
So Daniel, good to see you again.
Hey, you too.
Would you just share a little more about how impactful the Social Impact Fellows program, or should I say initiative, was for you? Because not only, I think, as you alluded to, the strong collaboration and the kind of synergy that occurred, but it's really also about relationship building as well in terms of the kind of professional and lifelong experiences and relationships that you have been able to form with those fellow students.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so in the Social Impact Fellows, I talked about it being like a multidisciplinary team. And so at the time, it was a 3-person team. We had a person from business, which was me. We had a person from social work, and we had a person from the School of Arts. I think now it's more focused on specifically social work and School of Management. But being able to learn from those peers and integrate what you're learning into the work you're doing for your organization was very impactful. And also establishing the connections with the nonprofit organizations and the different organizations that were part of the program was very impactful, not just the one you worked with, but the other people in your cohort. You know, you're meeting people from like the Tool Library and Weedy, and like there's all these different places in Western New York that you get to be more connected to. I also was asked to speak to the donors of the program to talk about the impact that it had. And I'll just say that for not just for myself, but anyone that was in the program, it's one of the most, it was the most practical and real world experience in developing my skills that I had in academia. Because it felt like we were basically just consultants, and we got to learn and practice with each other in our cohort, and just develop that confidence as social workers and I guess leaders in the community. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that I'm missing there, but
No, you hit the nail on the head, so to speak. I really appreciate that, because I wanted you to talk about how important those relationships really played out for you, because I believe that there is micro in the macro and macro in the micro. In other words, the skill set that we bring as social workers in terms of building relationships, forming connections, validating feelings, all of those things that we learn at a foundational level, those play out at a micro, meso, and a macro level. And you just talked about how they played out at a macro level very well. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. So I don't want to, I want to make sure that y'all understand the impact that social impact fellows really did have, and the value it serves. So yeah, I will be a lifelong supporter of the program and always will talk to people about it. And so let me, again, we have plenty of time for questions after, but let me just go through some of my post-graduation career, and then we'll definitely open it up to questions.
You might want to turn your camera off again. It's getting choppy.
Oh, here we go. All right.
but it's very clear when your camera's off. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't mind you guys not seeing me. It's okay. So, all right. So after graduating, to be honest, I was excited, but I was also pretty uncertain and had some anxiety. Like, okay, now what? I have to find a job. And I want to find the best job for what I want to learn and the work I want to do. So I actually first applied at Rich Products. I was at the time, I was trying to build this plant-based food social enterprise. And so I wanted to learn from an organization that I could get some more skills as a social worker and as a leader, but also maybe learn a little bit for how I could inform starting my own business. And the role was as social impact specialist. Long story short, after going into the final round of interviews, I didn't get that job, but I was confident. And even though I was kind of confident I was going to get that job and it didn't work out, I still felt like there was something else that was maybe a better fit for me. And so it took several months after not getting that first job until I actually heard from Mike. So you emailed me and you sent me this opening for an AmeriCorps position to help with the oh, and Charles, take care. Thank you so much for joining. And please reach out if you ever wanted to reach out for anything. But this AmeriCorps position was open at UB through the Health Promotion Office to help create their first financial wellness initiative. And so I had been looking for an opportunity, actually. I was talking to my mentors and friends about finding something that was service-based, kind of like the Peace Corps. I literally said that. That would help me bridge my background and interest in financial empowerment with social work and business. And so I'm like, Mike, you are a godsend. Thank you for sending me this, because this was like an intersection of everything that filled me up. And so I prepared and interviewed as if it was my job to be filled. I was very eager and excited for this kind of position. And one thing though, I got the position, and I was excited. But in the back of my mind, I was also thinking, because this is AmeriCorps, right? And the idea is that you're doing this service-based work, but you're earning probably just a little bit over the poverty line. And so I'll honestly say there's a bit of doubt that creeped in my mind at times, because I would see my friends graduating, finding high-paying jobs, and moving around the world. And so I was like, am I doing the right thing? Like, is this the right move? But that doubt was very short-lived, because not only was this the opportunity that was exactly what I wanted to do, I knew it was going to lead to an even better opportunity for my life, and that I would be doing fulfilling work that money wasn't going to be able to influence. And so my AmeriCorps experience was very full. I had a great relationship with the people that I worked with. It became more than just expanding their wellness coaching into offering financial coaching and doing workshops. There was this push from the higher administration of student life to make it its own program. And so to offer financial wellness programming separate from just the coaching itself. And so, I just developed a lot of skills and knowledge on how to start envisioning what this program might look like. I already had some relationships across campus as a student, but I was able to build stronger relationships now as an AmeriCorps member and try to think about some strategy for how to make this program serve the most amount of students with the most impact. I really love doing the coaching and teaching financial education, but I found this other passion for program management. And so I was really excited because they were asking me to join as a full-time staff member after my term was over, and UB is exactly where I wanted to work, to be honest. But as I was considering this, I was talking to people in my life and just thinking more deeply. And I was thinking, you know, I've been at UB for about 6 years or so, including my schooling and AmeriCorps, and I've been in Buffalo my entire life. And so I felt like it was worth to just look around and see what kind of other opportunities are out there for the kind of work I wanted to do. And so on LinkedIn, I used the keyword search and looked up things like financial wellness, financial education, financial program, whatever, you know, I could find. And I ended up interviewing at a few places: Morgan Stanley in New York City. They had a corporate financial wellness program. Boston Consulting Group, they also had a similar program in their consulting firm. And then at Stanford University as the program manager for their financial wellness program, Mind Over Money. And I was excited by each of them, but Stanford was the one that I really felt was the best fit for me. I loved working in academia, as UB showed me. I loved California. I always wanted to move there as a kid, as a skateboarder growing up. I still skateboard to this day. And I also felt like Stanford was a good place for innovation and entrepreneurship, just like UB has definitely become as well. And I knew that I'd meet a lot of new connections that would help me grow further. And so throughout this long interview process, I took the job, drove to California with my dog within a month of getting the offer. And although I really do miss UB and I'm glad to stay connected, I've had a lot of good experiences so far at Stanford. A lot of the similar kind of work I was doing at UB, but now I'm coaching with Stanford students and alumni. I'll move on to the next slide. Now I'm managing 38 volunteer coaches and the operations of the program. We are recently hiring 6 student program associates to help with our outreach, education, and marketing. And an unexpected thing that I'm doing is I'm advising fintech entrepreneurs on their personal finance apps who have reached out because of, I guess, just my role at Stanford. And so they're trying to learn how to better inform how they make their personal finance and financial education apps. We work with a lot of different organizations around financial education. And fintech, to explain what that is basically, it's like fintech is like financial tech. You might think of something like Venmo as some version of fintech. There's apps that teach financial education, or there's budgeting apps like Mint, or You Need a Budget. Any type of application that seeks to work in the financial space, whether it's in education, processing payments, etc. That's what fintech is. And so a lot of the companies that are reaching out to me are specifically around financial education and financial personal finance management. And so, yeah, that's been a very, very fulfilling process. I love learning about what entrepreneurs are doing, and I get to learn a lot from the kind of work that I might want to do personally. And so I get a lot of variety, flexibility, and autonomy in my positions. I'm learning how to better manage multiple projects at once. And so in terms of, I want to make sure I leave plenty of room for questions after. So I'll just end by saying, I kind of mentioned that I've recently started this side business in addition to my full-time role at Stanford that I call Bit Better Financial Empowerment. So I'm seeking to offer financial coaching, education, and wellness promotion to individuals and organizations, but specifically trying to focus on those working in fields of social impact. So people working for nonprofits, maybe AmeriCorps or Peace Corps members, people working at social enterprises or entrepreneurs starting a social business, people working in higher education, etc. But obviously, in addition to this, I really am prioritizing building the Mind Over Money program at Stanford. I really can see myself staying there for a full-time career. I could see myself staying there for a long time. I really love it there. But I also want to scale my business to have more people on my team to serve as coaches and educators, and hopefully serve more people and organizations broadly. And I'll lastly say this before we get into questions, but kind of reminiscing back to the philosophy and lessons that I've learned that inform my work, I just say we all have opportunities to make things a bit better through our work. Whether you're serving people directly or indirectly at a micro or macro level, in my work, I'll continue to frame my work in a way that motivates myself and others for meaningful action and joyful improvement. I'm going to continue listening deeply to others in an effort to help people breathe easier. And I'm going to continue dedicating my life to making things a bit better, never neglecting or minimizing the small and positive impact we can make today. Thank you very much. And sorry for the technical difficulties. And this is my team, Kelly and Angela. This is our Mind Over Money team. The 38 volunteer coaches wouldn't be able to fit in one picture, but yeah, this is our main team right now. So yeah, I'm open to any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat or to unmute yourself.
Well, I just want to say thank you. That was very impressive. And what a cool, unique, and innovative journey you've had. And I think, the students in the room could take some messages from you. It seems like you really took advantage of every opportunity, volunteer, thing you could get involved in. So that's fantastic. But I have some questions, but I will be quiet for now. And I'm curious what questions there are from the group. So I have one that a student emailed me, Maria, and she said she doesn't have, she has an MSW, or she's on the way to get an MSW, but not an MBA. But she's interested in your sort of career path where you mixed sort of social work and the business world. Maria was a social impact fellow also. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who is a social worker but is looking to get involved in more of the sort of business end of nonprofits, or maybe even to join the private sector?
I mean, I would say you can get a lot of education just from reading books on your own and talking to local executive directors, nonprofit managers who can maybe inform the work you want to do. I'll interrupt by saying I included a link to Financial Social Work, their website, if you're interested in learning more about them. And there's plenty of other certifications you can get. There's AFCPE for being an accredited financial counselor as well, if you're interested in that. But yeah, learning how to take some of your social work background and applying it to the business world, reading some different types of books on managing a business, even taking some courses, or watching YouTube University. I think there's a lot of resources on kind of getting like your own personal MBA without having to fully commit to a program until you're ready. But I think the number one thing that was most impactful for me, and what I would do if I didn't do the MBA program, would be to reach out to local leaders in the community who are already managing a nonprofit organization or a social enterprise or whatever it might be. And I can, if you want to email me, I could make some recommendations for people you can talk to specifically. I think on campus, Art Borden would be a good person to connect with. And she's the director of the Blackstone Launchpad program at UB. And obviously Mike would have a lot of connections that you can talk to too. But yeah, I think those personal connections and conversations with local nonprofit leaders would be a good way to learn more about how you might be able to integrate business with social work.
And you had mentioned a couple of times consulting with mentors. I think having a mentor can sort of help point you in the right direction. And if you don't have one, seeking one, which you can proactively seek a mentor too.
And is my audio still bad?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to turn it off while I'm speaking at least.
I think it might have to do with your virtual background. I know that has been a problem for me whenever I've used a virtual background as well.
I will turn that off, but I'm just going to leave my video off for now, if that's okay.
And then Adriana said, any recommendations for financial wellness apps to help with budgeting and getting out of debt? So I'm assuming you've looked at many of them, and there's probably some free ones, some freemium ones. What stood out as potentially a good one?
So one of the most popular ones that's also free is Mint. That's by Intuit. And just so you know, though, it's free for a reason, because if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. which means they're going to be putting some advertisements throughout. It is a very useful platform, but as long as you're okay navigating some of the advertisements on it, it is a very useful and good app to start managing your money, managing your debt, etc. The one that I personally use is called Copilot. That one is like $60 to $70 a year. And I think it's a very intuitive platform. It has a nice widget for your phone screen to show you if you're on track with your budget or not. You can integrate your investing, any debt you have to pay off. It can help you make a plan to pay it off. There's actually an app from an entrepreneur locally that developed something called Allo, ALLO. And that one is about value-based budgeting, where essentially you would start off this process of talking about what things you value most and essentially what things you want to spend your money on most in life. And it'll show you your budget based off of things that you are valuing. So if you value your physical space or social connection or your physical health, it'll categorize your spending based off of those values. So that's another thing I use. Copilot and Allo are the two main ones. But if you want a free version, Mint is a good option.
Nice, thank you. It looks like there's another one in the chat. This is a tough one. Is there anything you can suggest to help social workers as a whole to help increase our collective earning power? Pouring from a full cup is always better.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think that, again, it has to do with, and one of the questions that I saw you had sent me ahead of time was about navigating capitalism as a social worker and seeing how you can kind of best work within the system that we have. And I think starting your own kind of enterprise or working, whether you're starting an LLC or a nonprofit yourself, I think starting your own kind of endeavor can be a way of trying to increase your earning potential. And honestly, that's a tough question. I don't know how to, advocating for, I think social workers need to be earning more money. And I don't know if I have an answer for how to increase what providers will offer social workers, because I think social workers tend to be willing to take a lower wage for doing something that's meaningful to them. But I know we have experts in here, and I would be open to if anyone has other ideas. Yeah, Chris, if you wanted to share your thoughts.
I've been watching his facial expression, so I'm excited for what he's going to say.
Me too.
You're on mute.
Yo, Big Mike, I appreciate you bringing Daniel in, man. And I'm sorry I ain't get to hear more. I was on another meeting, man, so I ended up coming on during the Q&A. So I'm upset that I missed your joint. But I really want to kind of hear your perspective from like financial social work. Right? I talk to one of the things that I hate hearing is that social workers can't make money. You know what I'm saying? So I really talk to my students really a lot. Well, we definitely talk about capitalism and the nefariousness of that, right? But we in America, we're gonna have to engage with capitalism, right? But how do we do that? Well, I think about how do I do that as an instructor, right? And how do I introduce my students to this sort of world of capitalism and to get over this idea that making money is not bad. And like, you have to figure out a way to engage with capitalism, right? And then on top of that, it's actually ethical for us to show our clients how they themselves can engage with capitalism in a way that benefits them too. You know what I'm saying? So one of the things, with one of my students who's on the call right now, I ain't gonna shout her out. She hates it when I do that, so I ain't gonna shout her out. But we was talking really sort of like about sort of like the basics around investing, right? Like so a basic thing that a lot of people don't know about the stock market is like, if you invest in the stock market and you buy up some stock and say Apple or whatever, and you never sell, right? That you can then transition that over to your children and they don't have to pay taxes on that. So these kind of things are things that social workers who are not privy to this, and really it's systematic, like we hate capitalism, so we hate making money, like that's a bad thing, right? but these are things that can really help social workers, especially with the sort of income that we making, get over the hump in terms of wealth building. You know what I mean? So what I want to hear from you, Brother Daniel, is like, how should I be thinking about this as a professor, right? Who this is a very stimulating topic for MSW students, right? Who keep getting told, oh, you're in the field, you're not expecting to make money. Nonsense. Everybody wants a trip to Montego Bay. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to do something extra, right? Even social workers, you know what I mean? When they're not saving the world. So as an instructor, how do I bring that home? And what should I be talking to them about, right? And then as a student, how do I get students to get over that hump and understand that there's a balance between coercive capitalism, you know what I mean, and making money in an ethical way, that there is such a thing, you know what I mean? And how do you communicate that value over to your clients?
So I think one thing to bring up is you're talking about investing, and it can be easy to avoid wanting to like use the system for yourself if you already have a lot of negative feelings towards it. But a lot of people who make maybe like 40, 50,000 can be making up a lot more money over their time and provide for their families a lot more than someone making like six figures, depending on how they're managing it and investing it, right? So especially early on as a young social worker, having like a Roth IRA and investing for your retirement, you get like tax benefits from investing in a Roth IRA, and you can contribute up to like $6,500 a year and invest it for the future. And also in terms of income, it's, I think, thinking outside of the traditional social work roles that you might be considering, and thinking of ways that you can, let's say there's like a company you want to work for and they're looking for someone, you know, like there's a lot of ways that you can apply your social work background into a lot of different types of fields that aren't necessarily the traditional path that you're thinking of. Like even where I'm at right now, it's not necessarily like a position that was meant for a social worker, but you know, the skills you earn in communicating and advocating for people, building relationships, understanding the macro and micro levels of how you can make an impact, I think can be a good way to get yourself into different types of positions that would earn a higher income that aren't maybe the general like case management positions or other types of positions you might be thinking of. I don't know, Michael, you have something to say?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. So, Chris, I am in your boat 100% with how do we manage that? How do we engage with capitalism with students who sometimes want to overthrow capitalism? And you know, what do you do with that? I'll tell a story from when I was a student. So I was an advanced year MSW student. This would have been 2009. I was placed at a big nonprofit. So a nonprofit that probably had 200, 300 employees, probably a budget of, you know, $5, $6, $7 million, if not more. And I saw like in the parking lot, there was reserved for executive director, a spot. And the executive director, I don't know who it was, but they drove a BMW. I was walking with my field educator and I was like, that's messed up. Like, we're social workers and we're serving all these people, but this executive director drives a BMW. And my field educator was like, well, first of all, leading a big business is difficult, even if it's a nonprofit. And wouldn't you want that person to be A, making good money, and B, that you would want to like attract quality leaders to that space? Like, would you want that person to be driving, you know, not making very much money? So that to me told me how I was sort of socialized to think that accepting less money is like a sort of like a martyr's cross I was supposed to bear, and kind of getting over that idea. And Nancy Smith has actually been really good about this too, about like, no, we should make money. We absolutely should make money. What I'm seeing, though, from like where I sit in field is that there is a supply demand issue right now with social workers, where there's a little supply and a huge demand. When I started, there would be one social worker in a Buffalo public school, and they would be split between 3 or 4 schools. Now in each school, there's 2 or 3 social workers. So there's a huge growing knowledge that social work is important, partly from the pandemic, partly from a million other reasons. So we're in a position now where we have some bargaining power, and students are getting much more money earlier. So that capitalism is kind of working in our favor with that, where we have something that they need. And another point I want to make is I'm also seeing social workers employed in totally different roles. Like you were saying, to think outside of the traditional social work counselor role. People working at businesses, doing sort of helping run their sort of social wellness campaigns. More and more businesses are hiring social workers, and I don't know what a job there looks like, but I imagine the pay is decent. And last, I know Pat mentioned the gig economy, and I don't want to frame it as this, but I have a side hustle. I know other people have a side hustle in terms of like a consulting thing that they like to do. Like I help build out Salesforce databases for some nonprofits that I'm friendly with. It's something on the side. It's something I'm paid well for, and it's something that I like doing. So it is above and beyond my role. But I know many other people eventually get into that type of space too, where they realize they have some sort of growing expertise in some area, and that expertise is marketable. But to speak to sort of Chris's point about not really having the background in business, like when I went to create my LLC, like I was lucky that I had some friends help me out, but I was not prepared at all with how to do that. So that was a bit rambling, but I just had a lot of responses to what Chris and Danial had said.
Yeah, for everybody on, for any MSW students on it, I see at least two. I see a couple of my students on here. So like, yo, man, MSW students, man, this idea that social workers can't make money is nonsense, man. We got to educate ourselves in terms of the financial stuff, just like in anything else. And then we have to be careful that everybody themselves are going to kind of judge, what their ethical moves are and, and what they do. But we don't have to be coercive in the capitalism that you engage in, right? And so we as social workers, man, we got so many skills that we bring to bear. Ain't nothing for any of y'all to start an LLC when you guys graduate, to start an LLC, and you can have a real job, and that's at least 2 incomes to help you kind of dig into them loans that you're trying to pay off. Understand the rules around investment, right? There are so many ways to make residual income. We need a lot of social workers look at. I know I especially talk in my class about this rise in like in rental properties, right? You know what I'm saying? And once again, we got these slumlords, you know what I mean? You could own property and not be a slumlord, you know what I mean? And actually rent out at, below the market rate if you choose to. That really will help out a family, you know what I mean? But you can't help nobody out financially if you broke, you know what I'm saying? And you can't pass that knowledge on to nobody so that they can help themselves and their family if you don't know it, right? And the best way for you to know it is for you to figure it out and apply it for yourself and your family. And then if it works for you, then it's easy for you to share that with other people, you know what I mean? And so there's so many things that we need to learn. And there's so many ways that we can start now, even when we broke, right? Like it don't take much to start a Roth. As Daniel said, I think you can start a Roth for like $100, you know what I'm saying? And once again, those contributions, you have up to a year, to hit the max, you know what I'm saying? And that's something that's going to, once again, you got pre-tax, we got post-tax, but all of this is knowledge that we don't know, and we are discouraged as social workers to engage with that because, capitalism is bad. Nah, you need to figure it out so you know how to use it in the right way. So not zero tolerance, harm reduction, I'm done.
And Chris, I think what you're saying too, it's sort of ending or trying to end the stigma that social workers are all broke by choice, and that's just the path they got into. Which I don't know about you all, but I know many people who, when they told their parents they were going into social work, that was the first response was, well, you're gonna not have any money and be living in my basement, and that's not good for the profession or for the UB School of Social Work or for anyone if that's the prevailing image of social workers. Well, we are at 12:57. So thank you for the lively questions, comments, discussion. This is recorded, so I'll send it out to some people. Thank you so much, Danial, for coming out and trying this out with me. I think it was a success, so thank you so much. He did put his contact information in the chat earlier, but if anyone wants to reach out to him, I can link you with him. But thank you so much and have a good Friday.
Thank you all. Thank you.